I was loading our dishwasher after hosting Brad's colleagues when my world tilted sideways. My husband of 5 years casually mentioned that his friends thought I was not remarkable enough for him, adding with a shrug, "I could do better." I set down my coffee mug on our granite countertop, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "Then go find better." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Brad laughed nervously, probably expecting me to apologize or beg. Instead, I walked upstairs and began packing. The next 72 hours unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction. While Brad slept in the next morning, assuming our conversation was just another marital spat, I systematically dismantled the life we had built together. First, I called Air France and canceled our anniversary trip to Paris. The agent asked if I wanted to reschedule, and I simply said no. $2,300 in cancellation fees seemed like a bargain for my dignity. Next came the villa in Provence, our couple's massage packages, and the theater subscription we had maintained for 3 years. Brad found me in the kitchen that evening, stirring pasta sauce with unusual concentration. "Christy, about last night," he began, but I held up my hand. "I returned your Rolex," I said conversationally. Nordstrom was very understanding about the circumstances. His face went pale. "What circumstances?" I told them my husband decided he could do better than me, so I thought he should start fresh. I drained the pasta water, steam rising around my face like a veil. I also withdrew my contributions from our joint savings account. $47,000. My money, my choice. Brad stared at me like I had sprouted wings. "Christy, you cannot be serious about this." But I was deadly serious. For 5 years, I had supported his legal career while he introduced me as his freelance consultant wife. I had smiled through countless dinner parties where his colleagues' wives discussed their country club memberships while I pretended not to notice their condescending glances. I had listened to Brad's friends make jokes about my Target dresses and my Honda Civic while their wives flaunted designer handbags. The breaking point came 3 months earlier at Marcus and Jennifer's anniversary party. I overheard Jake telling David that Brad could have married much better if he had waited. Susan had laughed and said something about starter wives, while Patricia nodded knowingly. They thought I was in the bathroom, but I heard every word. That night, I had asked Brad about it. He dismissed my concerns, saying his friends were just protective and meant no harm. He promised it would not happen again. Yet here we were, with him delivering the same message directly to my face. My sister Amanda called while I was packing my clothes. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" she asked after I explained the situation. "More sure than I have been about anything in years," I replied, folding my favorite sweater into my suitcase. "But Christy, you two seemed so happy. Maybe he just had too much to drink." I paused, holding a framed photo of our wedding day. We did look happy. I remembered believing we were building something beautiful together. "Amanda, happiness built on someone thinking they settled for less than they deserve is not happiness at all." The second night, Brad discovered the credit card statements showing all my cancellations. He burst into our bedroom where I was organizing my jewelry box, separating pieces my grandmother had given me from gifts Brad had purchased. "Christy, this is insane!" he shouted, waving the Amex statement. "You canceled everything! Our entire anniversary trip!" "You said you could do better," I replied calmly, not looking up from untangling a silver necklace. "I am simply clearing the way for you to pursue that opportunity. That was just guy talk. You know how Marcus and Jake get when they have been drinking. They were just giving me grief." I finally met his eyes. "Brad, you agreed with them. In fact, you brought their opinion home and delivered it to me like a performance review. That tells me everything I need to know about how you really feel." He sat heavily on our bed, running his hands through his dark hair. "Okay, maybe I was frustrated. Maybe I said things I should not have said. But we can work through this." "Work through what exactly? The fact that you think I am beneath you?" The fact that you discuss our marriage with your friends like it is a business merger gone wrong? I closed my jewelry box with a decisive click. Or the fact that you just assumed I would accept being told I am not good enough and fight to prove you wrong? Brad looked genuinely confused, which somehow made everything worse. After 5 years together, he still did not understand why his words had cut so deeply. He saw our marriage as a negotiation where he held all the cards. I realized I had been playing a game where I was always meant to lose. The third day, I made a phone call that would change everything. "Robert," I said when the familiar voice answered, "I think it is time to move forward with the transition we discussed." "Are you certain, Christy? This will accelerate your timeline significantly." "I am ready," I said, looking around our pristine suburban home with its carefully chosen neutral colors and safe, conventional furniture. "Actually, I think I have been ready for longer than I realized." That evening, Brad came home with roses and takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. He had clearly spent the day strategizing his approach to win me back. "Christy, I love you," he said, setting the flowers on our kitchen island. "I know I messed up, but we can fix this." I accepted the flowers because they were beautiful, not because they changed anything. "Thank you for the gesture, Brad. But love is not just a feeling. It is a choice you make every day about how you treat the person you claim to love." "I treat you well," he protested. "I work hard to provide for us. I never cheat or lie or any of those things." "You do not cheat with other women," I agreed. "But you cheat on our partnership every time you let your friends disrespect me without consequence. You cheat on our marriage every time you entertain the idea that you settled for less than you deserve." He fell silent, perhaps finally understanding the weight of what he had done. But understanding and changing are two different things entirely. Living with Amanda gave me perspective I had not realized I needed. Her cozy apartment in downtown felt like a sanctuary after years of maintaining our perfect suburban facade. I was organizing my temporary closet when I remembered Brad's iPad, still logged into his messages. Curiosity compelled me to check one last time. What I found made my stomach drop to my knees. The conversation thread with Sierra Martinez stretched back 4 months. Sierra, the brilliant young associate who had joined Brad's firm last spring. Sierra, with her sleek black hair and law degree from Columbia. Sierra, who came from what Brad described as old money and wore designer suits like armor. The messages told a story I never could have imagined. It started professionally enough, work discussions and case strategies. But by June, the tone had shifted dramatically. "Your wife seems sweet," Sierra had written after the firm's summer picnic, "but I worry she does not understand the level you are trying to reach professionally." Brad's response made my hands shake. "Christy is comfortable with our current lifestyle, but I sometimes wonder if she would hold me back from bigger opportunities." The conversation escalated from there. Sierra planted seeds of doubt about my ambitions, my social connections, my ability to be the kind of wife a successful attorney needed. She shared stories about partners' wives who elevated their husbands' careers through strategic networking and social positioning. "Some women are content being housewives," she had texted just 2 weeks ago. "Others understand that marriage is a partnership where both people push each other toward excellence." But the message that broke my heart came from Brad. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would look like if I had married someone more ambitious, someone who could match my drive." Sierra's response was swift and calculated. "You deserve someone who enhances your potential instead of limiting it." I scrolled through weeks of messages where Sierra systematically undermined my relationship with my husband. She questioned my contributions to our household, suggested I was too comfortable with mediocrity, and painted herself as the kind of woman who understood successful men. The photos were worse than the words. Sierra at charity galas in stunning gowns. Sierra at wine tastings with other young professionals. Sierra networking at events I had never heard of. Surrounded by influential people whose names I recognized from business magazines. One photo showed her at a rooftop party overlooking the city skyline, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my car payment. The caption read, "Celebrating life with people who understand that success requires sacrifice and vision." My phone buzzed with a text from Brad. "Christy, please come home so we can talk." I stared at the message, then at the months of evidence that my husband had been emotionally investing in another woman. Someone who represented everything I apparently was not sophisticated enough, ambitious enough, connected enough. The irony was almost laughable. Sierra saw me as an obstacle to Brad's success, a small, town girl who did not understand the bigger picture. If only she knew the bigger picture included details that would have shocked them both. Amanda found me sitting on her couch at midnight, scrolling through the messages with tears streaming down my face. "Oh, honey," she said, sitting beside me and wrapping her arm around my shoulders. "What did you find?" I showed her the phone, watching her expression change from confusion to anger to protective fury. "That manipulative little snake," Amanda said after reading several exchanges. "She has been planning this for months." "The worst part is how easily Brad fell for it," I said, wiping my eyes with my sleeve. She told him exactly what his ego wanted to hear, and he ate it up like candy. "Men like Brad are easy targets for women like Sierra," Amanda said gently. She identified his insecurities and exploited them perfectly. I thought about the dinner parties where Sierra would appear at Brad's side, always impeccably dressed and armed with intelligent questions about his cases. I remembered how she would compliment his insights while subtly ignoring my presence, how she would mention events and opportunities that sounded exclusive and important. She made him feel like he was destined for something greater, I realized aloud. And I was the anchor holding him back from reaching it. "That is exactly what she wanted him to think," Amanda agreed. "But Christy, you have supported that man for 5 years. You have been nothing but loving and encouraging." The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, explaining that I needed to accelerate our divorce timeline based on new information about Brad's emotional affair. The second call was to Robert again. "I need to move faster than we discussed," I told him, "and I need to document everything carefully." "What changed?" he asked. "I discovered my husband has been planning his exit strategy longer than I realized. It is time he learned that 2 can play that game." That afternoon, I returned to our house while Brad was at work. I had 48 hours to gather evidence before he returned from his business trip to Chicago. What I found in his home office confirmed my worst suspicions. Brad had been researching divorce lawyers specializing in high-asset cases. He had financial documents dating back 6 months, clearly preparing to protect his assets. Most damning of all, I found a draft email to Sierra discussing timeline and logistics for making their relationship public after our divorce was finalized. But Brad had made one critical error in his planning. He had no idea what assets actually needed protecting. And Sierra, for all her manipulation and scheming, had no idea who she was really targeting. I photographed everything, then placed the documents back exactly as I had found them. Brad would learn the truth soon enough. But first, Sierra was about to discover that her carefully laid plans had a fatal flaw. She had chosen the wrong target entirely. 2 weeks of staying at Amanda's apartment gave me clarity I had not experienced in years. I spent my days at a downtown office building, handling business I could not have managed from our suburban home. The space felt like coming up for air after being underwater too long. Brad's attempts to contact me became increasingly desperate. Text messages evolved from casual requests to talk, to lengthy apologies, to accusations that I was being unreasonable. He left voicemails explaining that Sierra was just a colleague, that I had misunderstood their friendship, that his friends' opinions meant nothing compared to our marriage. I deleted them all without responding. Amanda worried about my unusual calm. "You are taking this remarkably well," she observed over coffee one Thursday morning. "Maybe too well." "I feel peaceful," I told her honestly. "For the first time in months, I feel like I am exactly where I need to be." That peace was shattered at 4:13 in the morning, on a Saturday when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Henderson, Brad's best friend since law school. Marcus had been at that dinner party where the whole mess started. I considered letting it go to voicemail. Something in the urgency of the repeated calls made me answer. Christy? Marcus's voice was thick with tears and something that sounded like panic. Oh, thank God you answered. I have been calling for 20 minutes. Marcus, it is 4 in the morning. What is wrong? Something happened tonight, at the firm's summer party. It is about you, and I am so ashamed, Christy. I am so sorry for everything. I sat up in Amanda's guest bed, instantly alert. What happened? Marcus sobbed into the phone, a grown man completely broken. Sierra brought Brad to the party as her date, at the Riverside Country Club. She wore this incredible dress and made this whole announcement to all the partners about their relationship. My stomach clenched, but I kept my voice steady. Okay, what does that have to do with me? She said things, Christy. Horrible things about you in front of everyone. She called you his practice wife and talked about how some people are just placeholders until the right person comes along. The partners heard everything. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar sting of humiliation. Even when I was not there, I was still being reduced to a punchline. But that is not the worst part, Marcus continued, his voice breaking completely. Someone filmed it, the whole thing. It is already spreading through every law firm in the city. Brad's reputation is destroyed. The partners are questioning his judgment and character. Marcus, why are you calling me about this? Because I helped cause it, he wailed. Sierra spent months manipulating all of us. She would ask pointed questions about your background, your career, your family. She made us feel like we were protecting Brad by pointing out how you two were mismatched. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean she manipulated you? She would bring up how partners' wives network and contribute to their husbands' careers. She would mention events you never attended, charities you were not involved with. She made it sound like you were holding Brad back from opportunities we did not even know existed. The full scope of Sierra's planning was becoming clear. She had not just seduced my husband emotionally, she had orchestrated a social campaign to isolate me from his support system. She told Jake that partners prefer lawyers whose wives understand the social aspects of the profession. She convinced David that you were too comfortable with Brad's current level and would not push him toward partnership. We started believing we were doing Brad a favor by opening his eyes. So you decided to humiliate me at that dinner party? We thought we were helping him see what we thought was obvious. But Christy, we were so wrong. Tonight, seeing Sierra in action, watching how she used Brad like a prop for her own social climbing, we realized we had been played. Marcus described the evening in devastating detail. Sierra had arrived at the country club like she owned the place, wearing a $15,000 designer gown and jewelry that caught the light from across the room. She worked the room expertly, introducing herself to partners' wives and making connections Brad could never have facilitated. She announced their relationship during the cocktail hour, Marcus said. Made this whole speech about finding someone who matches her ambition and vision for success. Then she started talking about previous relationships and how sometimes people need to outgrow their beginnings. That is when she mentioned the practice wife thing. She said, and I quote, "Some women are content being housewives, but others understand that marriage should elevate both partners. Brad is finally ready for someone who can match his potential instead of limiting it." I felt sick imagining the scene. All those lawyers and their wives, listening to Sierra casually destroy my reputation while Brad stood beside her like a trophy. What did Brad do when she said that? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He looked uncomfortable, but he did not stop her. I think he was too shocked by the whole situation to react. But Christy, by the end of the night, it was clear Sierra was using him. She spent most of the evening networking without him, treating him like her plus one rather than her partner. And now you feel guilty. I feel like garbage, Marcus said emphatically. We pushed Brad towards someone who never cared about him as a person. Sierra wanted a successful lawyer boyfriend for social status. Brad was just the most convenient option. I walked to Amanda's kitchen window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Brad was probably discovering that his fantasy upgrade had cost him everything he actually valued. Marcus, I appreciate you calling to apologize, but Brad made his choices. You all made your choices. Is there any chance you would consider talking to him? He has been calling everyone, trying to figure out how to reach you. I think he finally understands what he lost. I thought about the months of emotional manipulation, the systematic undermining of our marriage, the casual cruelty of that dinner party conversation. Then I thought about the business I had been conducting downtown, the decisions I had been making without Brad's knowledge. Tell Brad that he will understand everything soon enough, I said finally. And Marcus? Thank you for being honest with me. I know that was not easy. After I hung up, I sat in Amanda's kitchen drinking tea and watching the sun rise over the city. Brad was about to learn that Sierra's ambitions were matched only by her deceptions, and Sierra was about to discover that some games have consequences she never saw coming. The practice wife was about to become his biggest nightmare. The private investigator's office occupied the 15th floor of a glass building downtown, with views overlooking the financial district. Janet Thompson had come highly recommended by my lawyer, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the demeanor of someone who had seen every possible human deception. You were right to trust your instincts, Janet said, sliding a thick folder across her mahogany desk. Sierra Martinez is not who she claims to be. The file contained a complete breakdown of Sierra's actual background, and it was nothing like the story she had been selling. Instead of old money from Connecticut, Sierra grew up in Akron, Ohio. Her father worked at a Goodyear plant for 30 years. Her mother taught elementary school. Solid, hard-working people who would have been horrified by their daughter's manipulations. Her social media presence is completely fabricated, Janet explained, pointing to printed screenshots. Those designer clothes are borrowed from a rental service in Cleveland. The expensive car in her photos belongs to her cousin's husband. Even the charity gala pictures are from events she attended as someone else's guest. I studied the photographs of Sierra's real life. A modest two-story house in a working-class neighborhood. Family barbecues in a small backyard. Pictures from high school showing a girl who looked nothing like the polished professional she had become. She graduated from law school with over $200,000 in debt, Janet continued. Credit cards maxed out, student loans in deferment. She has been living paycheck to paycheck while maintaining this elaborate facade. The most disturbing information came from her previous employment. Sierra had worked at 2 other law firms before joining Brad's company. Both positions ended badly when her personal relationships with colleagues became problematic. Her former roommate from law school was very forthcoming, Janet said, producing another set of documents. Apparently, Sierra has a pattern of targeting successful men in professional settings. She studies their weaknesses and tells them exactly what they want to hear. I felt a mixture of vindication and disgust reading the detailed account. Sierra would research her targets thoroughly, learning their backgrounds, ambitions, and relationship status. She would position herself as the solution to problems they did not even know they had. She specifically goes after married men who seem dissatisfied or ambitious beyond their current circumstances, the roommate had reported. She makes them feel like their wives are holding them back from greatness. Meanwhile, Brad's professional world was collapsing around him. The viral video from the country club party had reached every major law firm in the city. Partners at his own firm were questioning his judgment and character. His track toward partnership, which had seemed guaranteed just weeks ago, was now in serious jeopardy. I knew this because my lawyer had connections throughout the legal community. Word traveled fast when a rising attorney made such a spectacular public mistake. Mr. Henderson has been asking about expedited mediation. My attorney informed me during our Tuesday meeting. He seems eager to resolve the divorce quickly and quietly. I imagine he is, I replied. Has he discovered Sierra's financial situation yet? According to my sources, she has been charging expensive dates and gifts to credit cards she opened using his personal information. He received several concerning statements this week. I thought about Brad discovering Sierra's mountain of debt and deception. The woman he thought represented social elevation and financial sophistication was actually drowning in financial desperation. The irony was almost too perfect. There is something else, my lawyer added carefully. Your husband has been sleeping in his car outside your sister's apartment building. The neighbors have complained to building management. Amanda confirmed this when I called her that afternoon. He looks terrible, Christy. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Any contact from Sierra? She called here twice yesterday, demanding to speak with you. She seems to think you are somehow responsible for her social media getting leaked to the legal community. I was not surprised Sierra blamed me for her downfall. People like her never accepted responsibility for the consequences of their actions. In her mind, I was the obstacle that needed to be removed, not the person she had wronged. That evening, I made a decision that would accelerate everything. I drove to our suburban home where Brad was apparently staying when he was not camping outside Amanda's building. He answered the door, looking like a man who had not slept in weeks. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled and stained. The confidence that had always defined him was completely gone. "Christy?" he breathed, like he could not believe I was standing there. "Thank God. I have been trying to reach you." "I know," I said, stepping into the foyer of our beautiful home. Everything looked exactly the same, but it felt like visiting a museum of someone else's life. "We need to talk." Brad led me to our living room, where I noticed empty takeout containers and wine bottles scattered across surfaces that used to be spotlessly clean. He had been living like a bachelor in the home we once shared. "I know you have questions about Sierra," he began, but I held up my hand. "Actually, I have answers about Sierra," I said, settling into the armchair that used to be my favorite spot for reading. "She is not who you think she is, Brad." I told him everything Janet had uncovered. The fake background, the financial desperation, the pattern of targeting married men. I watched his face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally, crushing realization. "She used me," he said quietly after I finished. Everything she said about understanding my potential, about wanting to build something meaningful together. She was just looking for financial security. She saw a successful lawyer with a stable income and a wife she could easily undermine, I agreed. You were her mark, not her soulmate. Brad buried his face in his hands. I destroyed our marriage for someone who was playing a game I did not even know existed. You destroyed our marriage the moment you started believing I was not good enough for you, I corrected gently. Sierra just gave you permission to act on feelings you already had. That is not true, he protested. I love you. I have always loved you. You loved the version of me that did not challenge you, or make you question your choices, I said. The moment someone suggested you could do better, you started shopping for an upgrade. The conversation continued for 2 hours. Brad begged for forgiveness, promised to change, swore he would spend the rest of his life making up for his mistakes. He painted elaborate pictures of how we could rebuild our relationship stronger than before. But I had already moved beyond our marriage. While he was discovering Sierra's deceptions, I had been making plans that would change both our lives forever. Brad, I said as I prepared to leave, there is something you should know about the woman you thought was not remarkable enough for you. What do you mean? I smiled, thinking about the files in my downtown office and the calls I had been making over the past several weeks. You will find out very soon, I promise. As I drove back to Amanda's apartment, I felt the satisfaction of puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. Sierra's game was over. Brad's fantasy was shattered. And tomorrow, I would reveal the truth that would reframe everything they thought they knew about Remarkable. I returned to our house the next Thursday afternoon while Brad was supposedly at work, though I suspected he was actually meeting with lawyers about our divorce proceedings. I needed to collect the last of my personal belongings, particularly some documents from our home office that belonged to me. I was carefully packing my grandmother's china when I heard Brad's car in the driveway. My stomach tightened with unexpected anxiety. Despite everything that had happened, facing him in our former home still felt emotionally complicated. He walked through the front door looking even worse than he had the week before. His usually impeccable grooming had deteriorated noticeably. The Brad I married would never have left the house with an unshaved face and a wrinkled shirt. "Christy," he said, stopping abruptly when he saw me kneeling beside the china cabinet. "I did not expect you to be here." "I called," I said calmly, continuing to wrap delicate teacups in tissue paper. "I left a message that I would be collecting my things today." "I have not been checking messages," he admitted, sitting heavily on our leather sofa. "Everything is falling apart, Christy. The partners put my partnership review on indefinite hold. Sierra maxed out 3 credit cards in my name without telling me. My reputation in the legal community is completely destroyed." I felt a flicker of sympathy for the man I had once loved, but it was overshadowed by months of accumulated hurt. "I am sorry you are going through difficulties, Brad, but these are consequences of choices you made." "I know that," he said quietly. "I know I messed up everything good in my life because I was too stupid and arrogant to see what I had." I stood up, brushing dust off my jeans, and looked at my husband directly. "Brad, do you want to know why I stayed calm when you told me you could do better? Why I did not fight for our marriage or beg you to reconsider?" He nodded, looking genuinely curious for the first time in years. "Because I knew something you did not know about yourself," I said, moving to sit on the coffee table directly across from him. "You are not the prize you think you are. And more importantly, I am not the consolation prize you thought you married." "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a news article from 3 years ago. The headline read, "Local tech entrepreneur sells startup for record amount." The photo showed me shaking hands with executives from a major technology corporation. Brad stared at the screen, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning comprehension. "Buildright," I said simply. "The app that connects small contractors with homeowners for renovation projects. I developed it while you thought I was doing freelance consulting work." "That is impossible," Brad whispered. "You never mentioned anything about a business." "I sold Buildright to Home Depot 3 years ago for $22 million, I continued, watching his face go pale. "After taxes and business expenses, I netted approximately $15 million. That money has been sitting in investment accounts, earning returns this whole time." Brad's mouth opened and closed without sound. He looked like a man trying to process information that did not fit any framework he understood. "But that is not all," I said, almost gently. "My grandmother's real estate investments, which I inherited when she passed 5 years ago, have grown considerably. The trust fund currently holds just over $18 million in diversified assets." The silence in our living room was absolute. Brad stared at me like I had revealed I was actually an alien from another planet. "You are worth over $30 million, he finally managed to say. "Approximately 33 million, depending on current market conditions," I confirmed. "Which means, Brad, that while you were worried about me holding you back financially, I have been quietly subsidizing a lifestyle you could never afford on your salary alone." "That is impossible," he repeated. "Our house, our cars, our vacations, I paid for all of that." "You paid what you could afford," I said. "I covered the difference. The down payment on this house? That was my money. The BMW you drive? I made the payments. Those vacations to Europe you thought were stretching our budget? They were well within my budget." Brad stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked our carefully manicured lawn. "Why did you hide this from me?" "Because I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have," I explained. "I wanted to know that my husband valued me as a person, not as a financial asset. I wanted to build a marriage based on genuine partnership, not economic convenience. All those times I talked about providing for us, about working toward a better future," he said, his voice hollow with realization. "You must have thought I was pathetic." "I thought you were sweet," I said honestly. I loved watching you work toward goals and feeling proud of your accomplishments. I never wanted to diminish your sense of purpose by revealing that money was not actually a concern for us. Brad turned back to me, and I saw something broken in his expression. Sierra only wanted me for money I do not even have. She thought she was trading up from a middle-class teacher's salary to a lawyer's income, but the whole time, she was actually trying to steal someone else's husband who was worth 100 times what she imagined. Sierra never researched me very thoroughly, I agreed. She saw a woman shopping at Target and driving a Honda and assumed I was exactly what I appeared to be. She never looked deeper. All those comments about you holding me back from financial success, Brad said, laughing bitterly. I was married to someone more financially successful than any of my colleagues, and I was too arrogant to see it. You saw what you expected to see, I said. A small-town girl who was lucky to marry a lawyer. It never occurred to you that I might have my own accomplishments and resources. Brad sat back down, putting his head in his hands. Christy, I am so sorry. I am so incredibly, unforgivably sorry. I know you are, I said gently. But being sorry does not undo the damage, Brad. You spent months discussing our marriage with another woman, entertaining the idea that you settled for less than you deserved. You let your friends ridicule me while you stayed silent. You made me feel small and inadequate when you had no idea who you were actually married to. Can we try again? He asked desperately. Now that everything is out in the open, can we start over? I looked around our beautiful home, remembering the hope I had felt when we first moved in together. I thought about the woman I was when we met, eager to build a life with someone who seemed kind and ambitious. Then I thought about the woman I had become while hiding my true self to protect his ego. No, Brad, I said quietly. We cannot start over. Too much has been broken. Too much trust has been lost. But now you know I love you for who you are, not what you have. Now I know you love the idea of being married to someone wealthy, I corrected. But you never loved the actual person I am. You loved the version of me that made you feel successful and superior. The moment someone suggested that version was not good enough, you started shopping for a replacement. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sierra. We need to talk. This is bigger than you realize. I showed the message to Brad, who looked like he might be sick. What does she want now? He asked. I imagine she has discovered my financial situation and wants to discuss options, I said, standing to resume packing my grandmother's china. People like Sierra always have an angle. You are not going to meet with her, are you? I smiled, thinking about the conversation that was about to take place. Actually, I think I will. Sierra and I have quite a bit to discuss. Sierra arrived at Amanda's apartment the next evening without calling first, which told me everything I needed to know about her desperation level. Amanda buzzed me from downstairs, her voice tight with irritation. Your husband's girlfriend is here demanding to speak with you, she said. Should I call security? Send her up, I replied. This conversation is long overdue. I had prepared for this moment, setting up my phone to record and making sure Amanda would be nearby if the situation escalated. Sierra had nothing left to lose, which made her unpredictable and potentially dangerous. When she knocked on the apartment door, I was struck by how different she looked from the polished professional I remembered. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her expensive suit wrinkled, and her makeup could not quite conceal the dark circles under her eyes. Christy, she said as I opened the door. We need to discuss this situation like adults. Please come in, I replied calmly, gesturing toward Amanda's living room. Can I offer you some coffee or water? I do not want refreshments, Sierra snapped, settling on the edge of the sofa like she was prepared to leave at any moment. I want to understand what you think you are accomplishing with this vindictive behavior. I sat across from her in Amanda's comfortable armchair, maintaining the same composed demeanor that had carried me through the past month. What vindictive behavior would that be? Do not play innocent with me, Sierra said, her professional facade cracking to reveal something much uglier underneath. You leaked my personal information to the legal community. You destroyed my reputation and my career prospects. You cost me my job. Actually, Sierra, your own actions cost you your job, I replied evenly. I simply existed while you made a series of increasingly poor choices. Poor choices? She laughed harshly. I identified a man who was unhappy in his marriage and offered him a better option. That is called recognizing opportunity. You systematically manipulated my husband and his friends to undermine my marriage, I corrected. You fabricated an entire identity to appear more appealing than you actually are. You committed credit card fraud using Brad's personal information. Those are not business strategies, Sierra. They are crimes. Her expression shifted, revealing a calculating intelligence that was far more dangerous than her emotional desperation. You know what I think, Christy? I think you are more upset about losing than you are about the actual betrayal. You cannot stand that someone like me almost took something you thought was secure. Someone like you? Someone younger, more ambitious, more sophisticated, Sierra said, her voice gaining confidence. Someone who understands how successful people actually live instead of pretending Target dresses and Honda Civics are perfectly acceptable for a lawyer's wife. I felt a flicker of my old insecurity, the one that had made me question whether I was good enough for Brad's world. Then I remembered the bank statements and investment portfolios that proved my worth in terms Sierra actually understood. You are right about one thing, I said quietly. I was pretending, but not in the way you think. Sierra leaned forward, sensing weakness. I know exactly what I think. I think you are a small, town girl who got lucky enough to marry above her station, and you cannot handle the reality that your husband outgrew you. Sierra, I said, pulling out my phone and showing her the same article I had shown Brad. I need to tell you something important about the small, town girl you thought you were dealing with. She glanced at the screen dismissively, then looked again more carefully. I watched her expression change as she processed the information, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, shocked comprehension. That is impossible, she whispered. Build right, I said simply. Sold 3 years ago for $22 million, plus inheritance from my grandmother's real estate investments. Total net worth, approximately $33 million. Sierra stared at me like I had slapped her. You are lying. I am not lying. You can verify everything with public records if you choose to do so. The silence stretched between us for long moments. I could see her mind working, recalculating every assumption she had made about me, about Brad, about the situation she had inserted herself into. Then something truly disturbing happened. Instead of looking embarrassed or apologetic, Sierra's expression brightened with what looked almost like excitement. This changes everything, she said, sitting back with renewed energy. Christy, you have to understand, this was never really about Brad specifically. This was about positioning myself for success. I felt a chill run down my spine. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting we think bigger, Sierra said, her voice taking on the persuasive tone I imagined she used with juries. You have resources that could benefit all of us. Brad has connections in the legal community that could be valuable to your business interests. I have ambition and social skills that could help you expand your influence. You want me to stay married to Brad so you can what, exactly? Rich people do things differently than middle-class people, Sierra explained, as if she were teaching me something I did not understand. Successful couples often have arrangements that benefit everyone involved. You could keep your husband and your lifestyle. Brad could have the partnership he wants plus the social connections he needs. And I could have the security and opportunities I have been working toward. I stared at her, genuinely speechless. Sierra was proposing some kind of unconventional arrangement where she would essentially share my husband while benefiting from my wealth. You cannot be serious, I finally managed to say. I am completely serious, Sierra replied. We are all intelligent adults. We all have things the others need. Why not structure a relationship that works for everyone instead of destroying each other over conventional morality? Because that is completely insane, I said, standing up from my chair. Sierra, you are talking about a fantasy that exists only in your head. It is not fantasy, she insisted, also standing. It is practical. You have money but no social position in Brad's world. Brad has professional connections but no financial security. I have ambition and networking skills but no capital. Together, we could all achieve things we could never accomplish separately. I realized I was looking at someone who was completely detached from reality. Sierra had convinced herself that her manipulations were actually sophisticated business strategies, that her criminal behavior was just aggressive networking. What happens if I refuse your generous offer? I asked. Sierra's demeanor shifted again, revealing the threat beneath her negotiation. Then I make sure everyone in this city understands that you have been lying about your financial situation for years. I tell them how you manipulated Brad into supporting you while you secretly hoarded millions. I paint you as the real fraud in this situation. And you think people will believe you? I think people love a story about rich women pretending to be victims, Sierra said, her voice getting harder. I think Brad's colleagues will be very interested to learn that his wife has been playing games with him for their entire marriage. I looked at this woman who had systematically destroyed my marriage, stolen my husband's affections, committed financial crimes, and was now attempting to blackmail me, and I felt something I had not experienced in months. Genuine anger. Sierra, I said, my voice still calm but with steel underneath, you have made a critical error in judgment. What error would that be? You assumed I was someone you could intimidate, I replied. But I am not the small-town girl you thought you were targeting. I am a businesswoman who has successfully navigated hostile takeovers, aggressive competitors, and sophisticated financial negotiations. And you, Sierra, are none of those things. Before she could respond, we heard Brad's voice in the hallway outside Amanda's door. He was arguing with Amanda about something, his voice carrying clearly through the thin walls. That would be your boyfriend, I said to Sierra. I imagine he followed you here. He is not my boyfriend anymore, Sierra said bitterly. He has been trying to end things since he found out about my financial situation. Apparently, he only wants women who can enhance his status, not ones who need his support. Then you finally understand how I felt, I said quietly. The knock on the door interrupted our conversation. I opened it to find Brad standing in the hallway with Amanda, both of them looking concerned and confused. Christy, Brad said, I saw Sierra's car downstairs. Is everything okay? Everything is fine, I replied. Sierra was just leaving. But Sierra was not ready to leave. She was ready to make one final, desperate play. Actually, Brad, I think Christy should tell you about her interesting proposal, Sierra said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. It seems your wife has some ideas about how we might all move forward together. I looked at this woman who had caused so much damage and realized that some people never learn from consequences. They only escalate their bad behavior until someone stops them completely. It was time to stop Sierra Martinez once and for all. The confrontation in Amanda's living room ended with Sierra making increasingly desperate threats, while Brad watched in horror, finally seeing her true nature without any romantic filters. When she began screaming accusations about fraud and manipulation, Amanda called building security. Sierra was escorted out while promising legal action she had no resources to pursue. 6 months later, I stood in my new penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline, reviewing the final divorce papers that had arrived that morning. The settlement was clean and simple. I kept my assets, which Brad had never legally been entitled to anyway. He kept his debt and his damaged reputation. The legal community had largely moved on from the country club scandal, though Brad's partnership prospects remained permanently diminished. He found a position with a smaller firm specializing in family law, work that seemed to suit his more humble circumstances. According to Marcus, who still occasionally updated me on Brad's situation, the experience had changed him profoundly. Sierra's downfall was more dramatic. Her credit card fraud charges resulted in criminal prosecution and 2 years of probation. No law firm in the city would hire her after word spread about her manipulative tactics and ethical violations. She eventually left town, though I heard rumors she had tried similar schemes in other cities with less success. People like Sierra always underestimate the paper trail, my lawyer had explained when the criminal charges were filed. She thought she was playing a sophisticated game, but she was just committing obvious crimes. My new life took shape gradually. I returned to the business world as an angel investor, using my wealth to support other entrepreneurs who reminded me of my younger self. The work felt meaningful in ways that pretending to be a simple freelance consultant never had. The penthouse apartment represented freedom in ways I had not anticipated. Every piece of furniture, every artwork, every detail reflected my actual taste, rather than some compromise designed to make someone else comfortable. For the first time in years, I was living as myself, instead of as someone's version of an appropriate wife. Amanda visited regularly, marveling at the transformation in both my living situation and my general demeanor. "You look 10 years younger," she observed during one of our Sunday brunches on my terrace. "Like you finally remember who you are." "I feel like I woke up from a long dream," I replied, pouring fresh orange juice into crystal glasses that had belonged to my grandmother. "Not a nightmare exactly, but not real life either." The philanthropic foundation I established became my most rewarding project. We provided financial and legal support to women facing difficult divorces, particularly those who had been manipulated or deceived by spouses planning secret exits. The work connected me with dozens of women whose stories echoed elements of my own experience. One Tuesday afternoon, while reviewing grant applications in my downtown office, I received an unexpected visitor. Brad stood in my reception area, wearing a suit that looked worn around the edges, his confidence replaced by something quieter and more genuine. "I know I have no right to be here," he said when my assistant showed him into my office, "but I wanted to deliver this personally." He handed me a letter, handwritten on simple stationery. The gesture felt oddly formal and completely sincere. "I am not asking you to read it now," he continued, "or to respond to it. I just needed to say some things I should have said months ago." I accepted the letter, noting how different he looked from the arrogant man who had casually informed me I was not remarkable enough for him. This version of Brad seemed to understand the weight of consequences in ways the old version never had. "How are you doing, Brad?" I asked, genuinely curious about his answer. "I am learning to live with choices I made," he replied honestly. "The new job is good work, even if it is not prestigious. I have been going to therapy to understand how I became someone I do not recognize. Mostly, I am trying to figure out how to be a better person than the one who destroyed the best thing in his life." "That sounds like important work," I said gently. "Christy, I need you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not just your money, though that would have been incredible to share with someone I actually loved. But your intelligence, your kindness, your strength. You are the most remarkable person I have ever known, and I was too stupid to see it." He left without asking for anything else, leaving me alone with his letter. I waited until evening to read it, settling into my favorite armchair with a cup of tea as the sun set over the city. The letter was 8 pages of detailed accountability. Brad acknowledged every specific way he had failed me, from the small dismissals to the major betrayals. He wrote about his therapy sessions, his growing understanding of privilege and arrogance, his recognition that Sierra had exploited insecurities he had never admitted to himself. Most importantly, he took full responsibility for choosing to believe I was inadequate rather than questioning why his friends thought it was appropriate to criticize his wife. He understood that Sierra's manipulation had only been effective because he was already susceptible to the idea that he deserved better than what we had together. The letter ended with a promise that surprised me. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of the love you gave me, even though I know it is too late to earn your forgiveness. You deserved so much better than the husband I was. I hope someday you find the partner who recognizes your worth from the beginning." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. It would not change anything between us, but it provided closure I had not realized I needed. 3 months after that visit, I met David Chen at a fundraising dinner for literacy programs. He directed a nonprofit organization that built libraries in underserved communities, work that required both practical skills and genuine idealism. We talked for hours about books, social justice, and the responsibility that comes with privilege. David knew about my business background and financial resources from the beginning, but he seemed more interested in discussing my foundation work and my thoughts about education policy. When he asked me out for coffee, it was to continue a conversation about sustainable philanthropy, not to impress me with expensive restaurants. Our relationship developed slowly, built on shared values and genuine compatibility rather than economic convenience or social positioning. David had his own accomplishments and resources. He chose me because he enjoyed my company, respected my intelligence, and appreciated my perspective on the world. 6 months into our relationship, I realized I had never once wondered whether David thought I was good enough for him. He had never made me feel like I needed to prove my worth or justify my place in his life. Love, I understood finally, should make you feel more like yourself, not less. Standing on my terrace this morning, looking out over the city where my life had been rebuilt from ruins, I felt profound gratitude for every painful lesson that had brought me to this moment. Sierra's manipulations had revealed Brad's true character. Brad's betrayal had forced me to reclaim my authentic self. The divorce had freed me to build a life based on my actual values instead of someone else's expectations. The woman who had once worried about Target dresses and Honda Civics now understood that true worth had nothing to do with other people's opinions. The practice wife had become the CEO of her own life, making decisions based on her own standards rather than seeking approval from those who never deserved her consideration. Justice, I learned, was not always dramatic courtroom victories or public humiliation for those who wronged you. Sometimes justice was simply the quiet satisfaction of living well, loving authentically, and never again settling for less than you deserved. As I prepared my morning coffee in the kitchen of my beautiful home, surrounded by artwork that brought me joy and furniture that reflected my taste, I smiled thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The path through betrayal and divorce had been painful, but it had led me back to myself. And that, I realized, was the most remarkable destination of all. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where you felt like you had to minimize your accomplishments or hide parts of yourself to make someone else feel comfortable? How did you navigate that situation? And what advice would you give to others facing similar challenges? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it with others who might benefit from hearing about the importance of knowing your worth and never settling for less than you deserve. Your like and subscription help me continue bringing these stories to light, and your support means everything to me. Thank you for joining me on this journey of heartbreak, discovery, and ultimate triumph. Remember that you are worthy of love that celebrates who you truly are, not someone's limited vision of who you should be. Until next time, may you always have the courage to choose yourself.